Hey guys, this one's going to be a bit chaotic because there's so much information to get through on this one and it all kind of overlaps. So, I've recently finished this, How to Avoid a Climate Disaster by our boy, Bill Gates. A very famous man these days. He's got his finger in all sorts of pies. All sorts of totalitarian pies. Very, very famous. Very, very naughty. So, what's he saying in this book? Because, again, I don't think a lot of us guys read books like this. And to be quite honest, I don't think a lot of people have read this one because the whole chemtrail thing, that's something that people are photographing all the time and they're putting on Twitter. And every time they do, Twitter community notes will come up and they'll say, oh, no, that's just contrails. It's, ice from a plane. It's totally natural, totally fine. And then you read this book and they don't call them chemtrails. He calls it geoengineering. He actually says they're going to put particles into the sky that are a millionth of an inch and they're going to reflect the sunlight away from the planet. And they're also going to spray salt into the clouds to brighten them, to brighten clouds. And that's going to reduce the temperature on the planet by a few degrees. That ain't a conspiracy theory. That's not people mistaking streaks in the sky for planes that they've seen all their life. That's a real thing. And they're saying it in the book. That's a funny thing that I notice about these kind of books. They admit to all sorts of things. And I don't know, like I say, for the amount of people who apparently buy this book, nobody's mentioning that. That they mention the geoengineering thing right there in the book. And like I say, they're putting on Twitter big streaks in the sky. No, don't worry about that. It's contrails. Don't worry about it. It's not geoengineering, but it is. That's exactly what it is. And more than that, like I say, it's going to be chaotic today, but I needed to get that one out. More than that, this is happening already. This carbon cult, this new world order based on the lie of, it's almost impossible not to use his words when you're talking about this. I'm going to do what he does. I'm going to redefine it. But when he says carbon, I'm sure you saw my last video, I hope. When he says carbon, what he really means is carbon dioxide and other gases. He's calling water vapor carbon because it's a greenhouse gas. And greenhouse gases apparently hold heat in. Some of them for a day, some of them for 10,000 years. I don't know who measured that. Maybe the Mayans were letting people know that the carbon was going in the sky. How do they know this shit? People who with an interest measure things like this. People who want to convince you that the Earth is this finite, heating thing that we're all going to die in a few years because things are getting a little bit warmer. And on that, like I say, I'm sorry it's so chaotic, but like I say, there's so much to get to in this. I'll try and start on a more narrative way. The way this book starts is, he tries to make a case for the raising temperatures and carbon. Spoiler alert. Even though this book's called How to Avoid a Climate Disaster, he never actually tells you what the climate disaster is. It never comes up. I made note of that. The closest thing you'll come to is saying a million times, it's bad, it's very bad, it's something to worry about. I'll just there we go. Here's a good quote. Nice and near the beginning. Okay. We don't know exactly how much harm will be caused by a given rise in the temperature, but we have every reason to worry. Expect a lot of slimy things like that in this book. There's a ton of probably, perhaps, maybe. And there's even a long list of bad things that don't happen. This is my favourite one when it comes to the climate disaster. Here's how we know we're winning. By all the bad things that don't happen. Let's have a little look at this. You can measure those benefits in terms of bad things that don't happen. Civil wars that don't break out over water rights. Farmers who don't get wiped out by a drought or flood. Cities that don't get destroyed by hurricanes. Waves of people who don't become climate refugees. What an interesting way of making a case. Claiming things that don't happen. So, on reading this, I was unconvinced that there's going to be a climate disaster. He says that since, I think there's a few people who wrote this book, it's not just him. I think there's a few people had the 2 cents in. But he says that since pre-industrial revolution times, that's 300 years ago, the global population, the climate, has risen by a degree. A degree. And this is apparently cause for concern, because it's some indeterminate time the climate will get hot, and something bad will happen. Very bad. Terrible. Awful. Bad. Doesn't say when. Doesn't say what. But we should be worried. And this is the phantom it's created to bring an entire world order of rules, regulations, and a brand new investment opportunity. That's the main thing about this book. One of the chapters was basically a sales pitch to get you salivating. It was how many things produce carbon. Basically everything. Everything produces carbon. You produce carbon. I do. The things I'm talking into produce carbon. The most popular things do. Lights. Everything. Everything produces carbon. Now imagine you had a brand new industry that taxed everybody who made carbon. Or you were somebody who was a carbon offsetter. Like I say, it's hard not... It should be gas offsetter. They're claiming to suck gas out of the sky, because even calling them greenhouse gases is to presume this theory. So really, every time you hear me say carbon, hear gas. Just gas. It's a lot with thin air. So this brand new industry that he's created, something called carbon offsetting, which is basically somebody who builds something that sucks carbon out of the air. Now, how does that make money? It doesn't. Surely it doesn't. Here's where it makes money. The companies that do make carbon pay the carbon offsetter money to forgive the sins. That's what this has done. This is an old trick. Churches would do it. States do it. They invent a sin, invent a crime, and then charge you for the forgiveness. Oldest trick in the book. Everything works as it is. And what he's done is he's got this like framework, and he's putting it in jigsaw piece by jigsaw piece all over the world. Because you'll see companies right now proudly proclaiming that they've got a carbon neutral. It means nothing. Right now, carbon neutral means nothing. They've got a small carbon footprint and all this kind of stuff. It's already there. This system's already been placed around the world. You see all these electric vehicles, people getting incentives. We'll get to that. Like I say, it's very chaotic. I'm really sorry. I'll try and put it in a summary at the very end, but it talks about so fucking much, this book. But the business, I'll get back to that. This brand new business he's got, it's essentially a tax on the entire world. The carbon tax, or the carbon offset. Basically, you've got a carbon offset, carbon guys will pay you. That's a big business opportunity. Now, how do you fund it? How do you get this off the ground? He dedicates 2 chapters at the very end. This is the main thing that I've realized about this. This is the real big sell. 2 chapters at the very end talk about how he needs governments on board with this. He needs countries to write laws for him, to push his product, to push his ideology. But worse than that, he needs taxpayer money to fund the research and development of all of these climate change technologies. Why doesn't the richest man in the world fund it? He's got a penny or two, hasn't he? Doesn't want to. It's a black hole. It's a money black hole. He wants taxpayers to fund it. You know, taxpayers who have no say in whether or not they pay money or not. Gets extorted out of them. You have to pay a tax or you go to jail. And then what do our governments do with all this tax money? Whatever the fucking want, it seems. They're going to do a few billion to a war zone here, few billion for foreign aid, million here, million there, write off a debt here, write off a debt there, guarantee a loan, whatever. Now, they're going to pour it into a giant black hole. They're just going to pour it in. They're going to pour all that money into research and development. And he says he wants people to fund high risk, high reward ventures for the carbon thing. You know, this technology doesn't exist yet. He wants taxes, our money, when there's a cost of living crisis and everything's going up through the roof and there's crisis everywhere. He wants the tax money to research these new technologies, and then they take them. The companies take them for themselves. We don't get it. The researchers, the people who put the money in, we don't get the fucking thing. The companies do. and then they sell it back to us at a profit. What a fucking brand new money grinding machine that is. Wow. That's when I was reading. That's the thing that stood out most in this book. It's a brand new industry. And it's out of fucking nothing. It's out of literally thin air. It's out of fucking thin air, man. And it's just like a framework put over the entire world, but not just the money, not just the power, not just governments getting on board. It's the control he has over everything. What doesn't generate carbon? Everything does. And he wants control over everything. He wants to be able to say, I know I keep saying he. It may be unfair to say it's just him, but his name's on the book, so I'm going to say that. It's probably a ton of people behind him pushing this agenda. But he, like I say, they want to be able to control anything. How land's used. He wants to make his own electricity grid, because this new system, our electricity grid that we've got right now, it doesn't work with it. Because he wants to be able to suck energy out of one house and put it into another. Suck energy out of one business and put it into another. If you're deemed non-essential, or... Well, that's the term he uses, non-essential. Basically, if your house is non-essential or whatever like that, and you're trying to charge your electric car, sorry, somebody else needs it. Suck and blow. A brand new electricity grid. This one doesn't work. Not fit for purpose. We've already covered in my previous video the redefinition of carbon. It means carbon dioxide and greenhouse gases. He does that sneaky sleight of hand with a few other things in this book. He uses the word zero a lot. Now, you know what the word zero means. Everyone knows what it means. It means nothing, doesn't it? Nada, zilch, absolutely nothing. Zero. It's not what it means in this book. He means near net zero. Now, what does that mean? It means balance. Whenever he says zero in regards to the carbon hawks, you need to hear the word balance instead. It leads into the whole new industry that he's bringing in, called the carbon offset. And what this balance means is, it doesn't really matter if you produce carbon. If you produce 10 billion tons of carbon in a day, it doesn't really matter, so long as there's a carbon offsetter sucking that much out. So it isn't zero, is it? It's just balanced. So don't let that one trick you. That's one of his sneaky words that he uses. But there's a few other ones. Here's my favourite one. Clean electricity. Now, when you hear clean, what do you think? Clean? Renewables, probably. Solar, wind, tidal, geothermal, all that kind of stuff. He brings them up. He brings them up only to dismiss them. They're not reliable. You can't rely on them 100% of the time, all the time. And they're location specific. They have to be built in a certain place. Wind has to be built on a certain place. Tide, obviously, has to be built on a certain place. So he brings them up, and then he goes, they're not really that good, actually. So what's he talking about when he means clean energy? Nuclear is the surprising answer to that question. Nuclear is considered clean energy. Now, here's why he considers it clean energy. Because it doesn't generate carbon. It doesn't generate carbon dioxide. But what does it generate? Nuclear waste. Yes. Bill Gates prefers nuclear waste to carbon dioxide. I don't know about you, but I would rather be sat in a room with carbon dioxide rather than nuclear waste any day. He would rather pollute the physical, actual planet with nuclear waste than put a gas that's already there and been there for millions of years, carbon dioxide. He would rather put nuclear waste in the ground than carbon into the sky. And he calls that clean electricity. Another sleight of hand he uses is clean product or clean manufacturing. What this means is any product that's made normally that pays the tithe, pays the ferryman, pays the bandit, the roadside bandit, their carbon tax, their offset. That's what a clean product is. Oh, there's a nice one. He even talks, that was a surprising thing, to hear that Bill Gates is behind the whole Beyond Burger thing, Beyond Meat. I didn't know that. He's like I said, a lot of fingers and a lot of pies, but he's talking about that. He doesn't like cows. He doesn't like cows farting, because they put a lot of methane into the climate, apparently. And apparently that heats things up. So what was his answer to farting cows? He was going to vaccinate them to change their biology. Is that how vaccines work? I thought vaccines were meant to protect you from a disease. Maybe it's one of those brand new kind of vaccines that, because like I say, is a cow's digestive system a virus? How the fuck can a vaccine change that? Is he talking about genetically modified cows here? Is that what he means by vaccines? Because from my understanding of them, they protect you against a virus. How do they stop a cow from farting? But I wouldn't trust anybody who's promoting fake meat, plant-based protein meat, cell-based meat, artificial meat grown in a lab. I wouldn't trust that guy in a million years to inject my cows. He's not going to be friendly with them, is he? So, ultimately, the thing to take away from this book is that it's a giant parasite, a brand new parasite, and he pushes one thing more than anything else. He needs governments to back him up. He needs laws to force his products onto the people, to punish them and incentivize purchasing bureaucrats, the guys who make the decisions to buy things. Wants to incentivize them. Wonder what that would be. But basically, he needs the government to push this. And of course he does. He's a businessman. But the worst thing for me is, any government who goes along with this is allowing all this tax money to just be chucked into a black hole. I don't like my tax money being the petty cash of billionaires. They should put it up front. The billionaires should be researching this, not us, not the taxpayer. If we get the device, maybe, but we don't. The companies do. So to finish off, in summary, don't let people with private jets tell you to lower your emissions. Don't let people investing in fake meat inject your cows. Don't let someone with their own electricity grid block the sun. Don't let tax money become the petty cash of billionaires. And don't let somebody who prefers nuclear waste over carbon dioxide tell you they're trying to save the planet.